Pop quiz cannabis hot shots. When was the golden age of medical cannabis in the U.S.? I'm Lex Pelger, and I do canna education for CBD Sciences, the makers of Plus CBD, who produce fine CBD and THC products. If you want to see more about the history of cannabis, check out our research site, CVResearch.info, where I have a timeline assembled. So, the story of medical cannabis in the West may be said to start with Dr. William O'Shaughnessy, an Irish physician in India. In 1840, he published this report about the uses of medical cannabis that he learned about from the local physicians, and you can still read this report on PubMed right now. In this and following publications, he talks about the use of medical cannabis for painful rheumatic arthritis, for lowering the convulsions of an infant with epilepsy, as well as for the painful muscle spasms that can result from tetanus or rabies. His work successfully popularized the use of Indian hemp as a medicine in England. This work soon spread across the channel to the famed Dr. Jacques-Joseph Moreau here in France. Not only did he publish this paper, the first work on the effects of cannabis on the central nervous system, he also introduced it to Parisian salons and formed a group called the Club des Hachiciens. Thanks to him, a range of literary luminaries, including Baudelaire, Gautier, Delacroix, and Dumas, got introduced to the wonders and perils of hashish. And from here on out, there will be a strange mix of scientific publications on the medical benefits of Indian hemp, as well as very creative writings on the effects of hashish. Same plant, completely different applications and public portrayals. In fact, many people didn't realize that Indian hemp and hashish came from the same place. But these two diverging stories of cannabis use converge here in our hero, Fitzhugh Ludlow. A guy so great that in my cannabinoid graphic novel series that I'm working on, he is the subject of the first 7 chapters. When young Fitzhugh was working as a pharmacist assistant, he tried everything on the shelves, including the opium extract. And so when the new cannabis extract arrived to his New England town, he read everything he could, and then he tried it. As often happens, the first dose didn't work. So the next time, he took a bunch. And boy, did it work. The psychedelic effects kicked in while he was sitting in his friend's parlor. Then he got to experience the classic paranoia of wondering, does everyone know if I'm high? Followed by a walk home that took thousands of years. By the time he graduated school in 1856, he admitted that he had an unhealthy relationship with hashish, and he said as much in his mega-hit bestseller, The Hashish Eater. But people remembered more about his descriptions of the orgastic delights than the perils of addiction. So from a pharmacist's shelf to the cool new drug, by the end of the U.S. Civil War in the 1860s, the dawn of the golden age of medical cannabis had begun. Within a few decades, dozens of formulations existed, and they could be bought at any pharmacist in the country. However, the product suffered from the same problem that plagues the industry today, reproducibility. The strength of extracts could vary wildly from batch to batch. But still, it seemed like there was enough in there for it to work. In 1860, the Ohio Medical Society published the first governmental study of cannabis use on human health, and it mostly reads like the solid advice that you would get from any trustworthy cannabis doctor today. Doctors from around the country issued reports on the use of cannabis from everything from migraines to genitourinary conditions. Meanwhile, on the cultural side, every major U.S. city had underground hashish smoking parlors, and New York City was reported to have hundreds of them, complete with breathless reports from journalists who went inside. My favorite fact is that at the Chicago World's Fair in 1893, the Turkish Pavilion even had their own hashish smoking parlor complete with hookah. The beginning and the end came with the 1908 Pure Food and Drug Act, which forced patent medicine makers to put the actual ingredients on their labels, which mostly consisted of grain alcohol, opium, and cannabis. Then the Mexican Revolution and racism led to the beginnings of the Reefer Madness campaign against first Latinos and then blacks that would lock this medicinal plant into the prison of prohibition for decades to come. Thus, the golden age of medical cannabis came to a slow, strangling end.